Sainte-Lucie. Coordinates, 13 degrees 53 and 60 degrees 58 W, 13.883 degrees north 60.967 degrees west, 13.883, minus 60.967. Sainte-Lucie, /Lu/, listen, French, Sainte-Lucie, is a sovereign island country in the West Indies in the eastern Caribbean Sea on the boundary with the Atlantic Ocean. The island was previously called Iyonola, the name given to the island by the native Amerindians, and later, Hewanorra, the name given by the native Caribs. Part of the Lesser Antilles, it is located north/northeast of the island of Saint Vincent, northwest of Barbados and south of Martinique. It covers a land area of 617 square kilometers, 238 square miles, and reported a population of 165,595 in the 2010 census. Its capital is Castries. The French were the island's first European settlers. They signed a treaty with the native island Caribs in 1660. England took control of the island from 1663 to 1667. In ensuing years, it was at war with France 14 times, and the rule of the island changed frequently. It was ruled 7 times each by the French and British. In 1814, the British took definitive control of the island. Because it switched so often between British and French control, Sainte-Lucie was also known as the Helen of the West Indies after the Greek mythological character, Helen of Troy. Representative government came about in 1840, universal suffrage was established in 1953. From 1958 to 1962, the island was a member of the West Indies Federation. On February 22, 1979, Sainte-Lucie became an independent state and a member of the Commonwealth of Nations. Sainte-Lucie is a mixed jurisdiction, meaning that it has a legal system based in part on both the civil law and English common law. The Civil Code of Sainte-Lucie of 1867 was based on the Quebec Civil Code of 1866, as supplemented by English common law-style legislation. It is also a member of Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie. Etymology. One of the Windward Islands, Sainte-Lucie was named after Saint Lucy of Syracuse, 8283–304. It is the only country in the world named after a historical woman. Ireland is named after the Celtic goddess of fertility Hera. Legend states French sailors were shipwrecked here on 13th of December, the feast day of Saint Lucie, thus naming the island in honor of Saint Lucie. History. Pre-colonial period. The first proven inhabitants were the peaceful Arawaks, though there may have been other native peoples prior to this. The Arawak are believed to have come from northern South America sometime around 200 to 400 AD, as there are numerous archaeological sites on the island where specimens of their well-developed pottery have been found. There is evidence to suggest that the Arawak called the island Iyonola, meaning land of the iguanas, due to the island's high number of iguanas. The more aggressive Caribs arrived around 800 AD, and seized control from the Arawaks by killing their men and assimilating the women into their own society. They called the island Hewanorra, and later Hewanorra, Iyonola, or there where iguanas are found. Early European period. Christopher Columbus may have sighted the island during his 4th voyage in 1502, since he made landfall on Martinique, yet he does not mention the island in his log. Juan de la Cosa noted the island on his map of 1500, calling it El Falcon, and another island to the south Las Agujas. A Spanish cedula from 1511 mentions the island within the Spanish domain, and a globe in the Vatican made in 1520, shows the island as Sainte Lucia. In the late 1550s, the French pirate François Leclerc, known as Jean de Bois, due to his wooden leg, set up a camp on Pigeon Island, from where he attacked passing Spanish ships. In 1605, an English vessel called the Oliffe Blossom was blown off course on its way to Guyana, and the 67 colonists started a settlement on Saint Lucia, after initially being welcomed by the Carib chief Antony. By September 26, 1605 only 19 survived following continued attacks by the Carib chief Augralmart, so the settlers fled the island. French colony. In 1664, Thomas Warner, son of Sir Thomas Warner, the governor of St. Kitts, claimed Saint Lucia for England. He brought 1,000 men to defend it from the French, but after 2 years, only 89 survived, with the rest dying mostly due to disease. In 1666, the French West India Company resumed control of the island, which in 1674 was made an official French crown colony as a dependency of Martinique. 18th and 19th centuries. Both the British and the French found the island attractive after the slave-based sugar industry developed, and during the 18th century the island changed ownership or was declared neutral territory a dozen times, although the French settlements remained and the island was a de facto French colony well into the 18th century. In 1722, George I of Great Britain granted both St. Lucia and Saint Vincent to the second Duke of Montagu. He in turn appointed Nathaniel Uring, a merchant sea captain and adventurer, as deputy governor. Uring went to the islands with a group of 7 ships, and established settlement at Pettycarnage. Unable to get enough support from British warships, he and the new colonists were quickly run off by the French. During the 7 Years' War, Britain occupied St. Lucia for a year. Britain handed the island back to the French at the Treaty of Paris in 1763. Like the English and Dutch on other islands, the French began to develop the land for the cultivation of sugar cane as a commodity crop on large plantations in 1765. In January 1791, during the French Revolution, the National Assembly sent 4 commissaires to St. Lucia to spread their revolutionary philosophy. By August 1791, slaves began to abandon their estates and Governor de Guimet fled. In December 1792, Lieutenant Jean-Baptiste Raymond de Lacrosse arrived with revolutionary pamphlets, and the impoverished whites and free people of color began to arm themselves as patriots. On February 1, 1793, France declared war on England and Holland, and General Nicolas Xavier de Ricard took over as governor. The National Convention abolished enslavement on February 4, 1794, but St. Lucia fell to a British invasion led by Vice Admiral John Jervis on April 1, 1794. Mornay Fortune became Fort Charlotte. Soon, a patriot army of resistance, l'Armée Française dans les Bois, began to fight back. Thus started the First Brigand War. A short time later the British invaded the island as a part of the recently broken-out war with France. On February 21, 1795, a group of locals under the nominal control of Victor Hughes defeated a battalion of British troops at Vieux Fort and Rabat. In 1796, Castries was burned as part of the conflict. General John Moore retook Fort Charlotte in 1796 with the 27th Innies, killing Fusiliers after 2 days of bitter fighting. As an honor, the Fusiliers' regimental color was displayed on the flagstaff of the captured fortress at Mornay Fortune for an hour before being replaced by the Union Jack. Moore would then participate in British efforts to repress the slave rebels until falling ill of yellow fever, upon which he returned to Britain before 1798. In 1803, the British regained control of the island. Many of the rebels escaped into the thick rainforest where they evaded capture and established maroon communities. The slavery on the island was continued for a short time, but anti-slavery sentiment was rising in Britain. The British stopped the import of slaves by anyone, white or colored, when they abolished the slave trade in 1807. France and Great Britain continued to contest St. Lucia until the British secured it in 1814, as part of the Treaty of Paris ending the Napoleonic Wars. Thereafter, St. Lucia was considered part of the British Windward Islands colony. The institution of slavery was abolished on the island in 1836, as it was throughout the British Empire. After abolition, all former slaves had to serve a 4-year apprenticeship, to accustom them to the idea of freedom. During this period, they worked for their former masters for at least 3/4 of the work week. Full freedom was duly granted by the British in 1838. By that time, people of African ethnicity greatly outnumbered those of ethnic European background. Some people of Carib descent also comprised a minority on the island. Castries Harbor was protected by a system of 60 surrounding forts. Along the top of Mornay Fortune there are 6 military sites. Building work by the French started in 1768, and the British completed the work by 1890. They include Fort Charlotte, Old Mornay Fortress, the Apostles' Battery, 1888 to 1890, the powder magazine built by the French in the 1750s, Provost's Redoubt, 1792, built as a lookout point, and the Combremere Barracks. The best preserved installation is a battery at Ļ'Uಃʃə Point, completed in 1888. It was not abandoned till 1905. This fort in particular was built by the British to repel any attack from the United States on the then valuable coaling harbor of Castries. 20th and 21st centuries. The Second World War visited the island directly during the Battle of the Caribbean, when a German U-boat attacked and sank 2 British ships in Castries Harbor on March 9, 1942. In the mid-20th century, St. Lucia joined the West Indies Federation, 1958 to 1962, when the colony was dissolved. In 1967, St. Lucia became one of the 6 members of the West Indies Associated States, with internal self-government. In 1979, it gained full independence under Sir John Compton of the Conservative United Workers' Party, UWP. The new country chose to remain within the British Commonwealth and to retain Queen Elizabeth as monarch, represented locally by a Governor-General. Post-independence era. Compton's initial term as Prime Minister lasted only a few months, as he was defeated by the left-leaning St. Lucia Labour Party, SLP, under Alan Louisi in the 1979 St. Lucian general election. The SLP sought to improve ties with socialist countries in the region such as Cuba, though the economy was severely affected by Hurricane Allen in 1980. Louisi was replaced as Prime Minister by Winston Sunak in 1981. The SLP government faced a series of strikes and Sunak agreed to stand down, with Michael Pilgrim of the Progressive Labour Party briefly serving as acting Prime Minister until the 1982 St. Lucian general election. This election was won by the UWP under John Compton, who proceeded to rule the country uninterrupted until 1996. He was succeeded by Vaughan Lewis, who ruled for just over a year before losing the 1997 St. Lucian general election to the SLP under Kenny Anthony. During this era, the UWP adopted a generally pro-Western, pro-business outlook, seeking to diversify the economy away from over-reliance on bananas and boosting the tourism sector. Compton was also a keen advocate of regional integration. Kenny remained in power until 2006 when the UWP, again led by Compton, won control of Parliament. Compton pledged to boost the economy and tackle the rising crime rate. Police attempts to curb crime were criticized in 2015 when it emerged that several suspects had been unlawfully shot by police and the circumstances of their deaths covered up. In May 2007, after Compton suffered a series of small strokes, Finance and External Affairs Minister Stephenson King became acting Prime Minister and succeeded Compton as Prime Minister when the latter died in September 2007. In November 2011, Kenny Anthony was re-elected as Prime Minister for a third time. In the June 2016 election, the United Workers' Party, UWP, assumed power again, with Alan Chastanet becoming Prime Minister. Geography. The volcanic island of St. Lucia is more mountainous than most Caribbean islands, with the highest point being Mount Gimi, at 950 meters, 3,120 feet, above sea level. 2 other mountains, the Pitons, form the island's most famous landmark. They are located between Soufriere and Choiseul on the western side of the island. St. Lucia is the only island in the world that contains a drive-in volcano. Forests cover about 77% of the land area. There are a number of small islands off the coast, the largest of which are the Maria Islands in the southeast. The capital city of St. Lucia is Castries, population 60,263, where 32.4% of the population lives. Other major towns include Gros Islet, Soufriere, and Vieux-Fort. The population tends to be concentrated around the coast, with the interior more sparsely populated. Climate. The local climate is tropical, moderated by northeast trade winds, with a dry season from 1 December to 31st of May, and a wet season from 1 June to 30th of November. Average daytime temperatures are around 30 degrees Celsius, 86.0 degrees Fahrenheit, and average nighttime temperatures are around 24 degrees Celsius, 75.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Since it is fairly close to the equator, the temperature does not fluctuate much between winter and summer. Average annual rainfall ranges from 1,300 mm, 51.2 in, on the coast to 3,810 mm, 150 in the mountain rainforests. Geology. The geology of St. Lucia can be described as composing 3 main areas. The oldest, 16 to 18 ma, volcanic rocks are exposed from Castries northward and consist of erodic basalt and andesite centers. The middle, central highlands, portion of the island consists of dissected andesite centers, 10.4 to 1 Maya, while the lower southwest portion of the island contains recent activity from the Soufriere Volcanic Center, SVC. This SVC, centered about the Qualabou Depression, contains pyroclastic flow deposits, lava flows, domes, block and ash flow deposits, and explosion craters. This depression's perimeter includes the town of Soufriere, Mount Tabak, Mount Gimi, Morne-Bonin, and Gros Piton. At 10 kilometers, 6.2 miles, in diameter, though the western portion is open towards the Grenada Basin, The depression formed as recently as 100 km. The depression is noted for its geothermal activity, especially at Sulphur Springs and Soufriere Estates, a phreatic eruption in 1776, and recent seismic activity, 2000 to 2001. Eroded andesitic stratovolcanoes to the northeast of the depression include Mount Gimy, Piton Saint-Esprit, and Mount Grand Magazine, all greater than 1 mi in age. Andesitic and dacite pyroclastic flows from these volcanoes are found at Mornay Tabak Dome, 532 km, Mornay Bonin Dome, 273 km, and Bellevue, 264 km. Avalanche deposits from the formation of the Qualabou Depression are found offshore, and in the massive blocks of Rabbit, Plaisance, and Cabarel. The dacitic domes of Petit Piton, 109 km, and Gros Piton, 71 km, were then extruded onto the depression floor accompanied by the Anse John, 104 km, and La Pointe, 59.8 km, pyroclastic flows. Later, pyroclastic flows include Pumice Ridge Belfond and Anse Noire, 20 km. Finally, the dacitic domes of Terre Blanche, 15.3 km, and Belfond, 13.6 km, formed within the depression. Government. Sainte-Lucie is a Commonwealth realm. Elizabeth II is Queen of Saint Lucia, represented on the island by a Governor-General. The Prime Minister is normally the head of the party commanding the support of the majority of the members of the House of Assembly, which has 17 seats. The other chamber of Parliament, the Senate, has 11 appointed members. Saint Lucia is a two-party parliamentary democracy. 3 political parties participated in the June 6, 2016 general election. Alain Chastanet of the United Workers' Party won 11 of the 17 seats. Foreign relations. Saint Lucia maintains friendly relations with the major powers active in the Caribbean, including the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and France. Saint Lucia has no current international disputes. Saint Lucia is a full and participating member of the Caribbean Community, Caricom, Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, and La Francophonie. Saint Lucia is a Commonwealth realm. Saint Lucia became the 152nd member of the United Nations on December 9, 1979. As of January 2018, Cosmos Richardson, who presented his credentials on February 22, 2017, was Saint Lucia's representative to the United Nations. Organization of American States, OAS. The Charter of the ʻluːʃə was signed in Bogotá in 1948 and was amended by several protocols which were named after the city and the year in which the protocol was signed, such as Managua in 1993 forming part of the name of the protocol. Saint Lucia entered the ʻluːʃə system on February 22, 1979. Agreements which impact on financial relationships. The Double Taxation Relief, Caricom, Treaty 1994. At a Caricom meeting, the representative of Saint Lucia, John Compton signed the Double Taxation Relief, Caricom, Treaty 1994 on July 6, 1994. The representatives of 7 Caricom countries signed similar agreements at Sherborne Conference Centre, St. Michael, Barbados. The countries whose representatives signed the treaties in Barbados were Antigua and Barbuda, Belize, Grenada, Jamaica, St. Kitts and Nevis, Saint Vincent and the Grenadines, and Trinidad and Tobago. This treaty covered taxes, residence, tax jurisdictions, capital gains, business profits, interest, dividends, royalties and other areas. Fatca. On June 30, 2014, Saint Lucia signed a Model 1 agreement with the United States of America in relation to Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, Fatca. As of September 1, 2016, the status of the agreement is listed as in force. Preceding the 2014 Fatca agreement is one which was entered into on January 30, 1987 between the United States of America and Saint Lucia according to paragraph 2 of the Model 1 agreement, the purpose of which was to exchange tax information. Military. Saint Lucia has no regular military force. A special service unit and the Coast Guard are both under the command of the Royal Saint Lucia Police. In 2018, Saint Lucia signed the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Administrative divisions. The districts of the island, established by the French colonial government and continued by the British, are. An additional area is the Forest Reserve Area Quarter, 78.3 square kilometers. Economy. The United Nations categorizes Saint Lucia as a small island developing state, a designation similar to a developing country with a few substantial differences due to Saint Lucia's island nature. The services sector accounted for 82.8% of GDP, followed by industry and agriculture at 14.2% and 2.9%, respectively. An educated workforce and improvements in roads, communications, water supply, sewerage, and port facilities have attracted foreign investment in tourism and in petroleum storage and transshipment. However, with the US, Canada, and Europe in recession, tourism declined by double digits in early 2009. The recent change in the European Union import preference regime and the increased competition from Latin American bananas have made economic diversification increasingly important in Saint Lucia. Saint Lucia has been able to attract foreign business and investment, especially in its offshore banking and tourism industries, which is Saint Lucia's main source of revenue. The manufacturing sector is the most diverse in the Eastern Caribbean area, and the government is trying to revitalize the banana industry. Despite negative growth in 2011, economic fundamentals remain solid, and GDP growth should recover in the future. Inflation has been relatively low, averaging 5.5% between 2006 and 2008. Saint Lucia's currency is the East Caribbean dollar, a regional currency shared among members of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, ECU. The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, ECCL, issues the East Caribbean dollar, manages monetary policy, and regulates and supervises commercial banking activities in member countries. In 2003, the government began a comprehensive restructuring of the economy, including elimination of price controls and privatization of the state banana company. Tourism. Tourism is vital to Saint Lucia's economy. Its economic importance is expected to continue to increase as the market for bananas have become more competitive. Tourism tends to be more substantial during the dry season, January to April, often referred to as the tourist season. Saint Lucia tends to be popular due to its tropical weather and scenery and its numerous beaches and resorts. Other tourist attractions include a drive-in volcano, sulfur springs, in Soufriere, ziplining in beautiful Sioux Falls, Dennery, the botanical gardens, the majestic Twin Peaks, the Pitons, a World Heritage Site, the rainforests, several options of boat trips, Frigate Island Nature Reserve, operated by the St. Lucia National Trust, Dennery, and Pigeon Island National Park, which is home to Fort Rodney, an old British military base. The majority of tourists visit St. Lucia as part of a cruise. Most of their time tends to be spent in Castries, although Soufriere, Marigot Bay, Rodney Bay and Gros Islet are popular locations to visit. The current Minister of Tourism is Dominic Fedie. He has been in his role since 2016. Demographics. St. Lucia reported a population of 165,595 in the 2010 national census. In 2016, the United Nations Population Division estimated St. Lucia's population at 178,015. The country's population is evenly divided between urban and rural areas, with more than a third living in the capital, Castries. Despite a high emigration rate, the population is growing rapidly at about 1.2% per year. Migration from St. Lucia is primarily to Anglophone countries, with the United Kingdom having almost 10,000 St. Lucian-born citizens, and over 30,000 of St. Lucian heritage. The second most popular destination for St. Lucian émigrés is the United States, where a combined, foreign and national-born St. Lucians, almost 14,000 reside. Canada is home to a few thousand St. Lucians. Ethnic groups. St. Lucia's population is predominantly of African and mixed African-European Carib descent, with a small Indo-Caribbean minority, 3%. Members of other unspecified ethnic groups account for about 2% of the population. Languages. The official language is English. St. Lucian French Creole, Creole, which is colloquially referred to as Patois, is spoken by 95% of the population. This Antillean Creole is used in literature and music, and is gaining official acknowledgement. As it developed during the early period of French colonization, the Creole is derived chiefly from French and West African languages, with some vocabulary from the island Carib language and other sources. Antillean Creole is also spoken in Dominica, Martinique, Guadeloupe, and, to a lesser extent, Saint Vincent and Grenada. It also resembles the Creole spoken in French Guiana, Haiti, Mauritius and the Seychelles. Sainte-Lucie is a member of La Francophonie. Religion. About 61.5% of the population is Roman Catholic. Another 25.5% belong to Protestant denominations, includes Seventh-day Adventist 10.4%, Pentecostal 8.9%, Baptist 2.2%, Anglican 1.6%, Church of God 1.5%, other Protestant 0.9%. Evangelicals comprise 2.3% of the population and 1.1% are Jehovah's Witnesses. In addition, about 1.9% of the population adheres to the Rastafari movement. Other religions include Islam, Baha'i Faith, Judaism, and Buddhism. Health. See Health in Saint Lucia. Crime. In 2017, Saint Lucia recorded 60 homicides, the highest in the country's history. Culture. The culture of Saint Lucia has been influenced by African, East Indian, French, and English heritage. One of the secondary languages is Saint Lucian French Creole or Creole, spoken by almost all of the population. Saint Lucia boasts the second highest ratio of Nobel laureates produced with respect to the total population of any sovereign country in the world. 2 winners have come from Saint Lucia. Sir Arthur Lewis won the Nobel Prize in Economics in 1979, and the poet Derek Walcott received the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1992. Festivals. Saint Lucian cultural festivals include La Rose and La Marguerite, the first representing a native Saint Lucian fraternal society known as the Order of the Rose that is fashioned in the mold of Rosicrucianism, and the second representing its traditional rival, the native Saint Lucian equivalent of Freemasonry known as the Order of the Marguerite. References to their origins as versions of pre-existing external secret societies can be seen in a mural painted by Dunstan St. Omer, depicting the Holy Trinity of Osiris, Horus, and Isis. The biggest festival of the year is the Saint Lucia Jazz Festival. Held in early May at multiple venues throughout the island, it draws visitors and musicians from around the world. The grand finale or main stage is held at the Pigeon Island, which is located to the north of the island. Traditionally, in common with other Caribbean countries, Saint Lucia held a carnival before Lent. In 1999, the government moved Carnival to mid-July to avoid competing with the much larger Trinidad and Tobago Carnival and so as to attract more overseas visitors. In May 2009, St. Lucians commemorated the 150th anniversary of West Indian heritage on the island. Sport. The Windward Islands cricket team includes players from St. Lucia and plays in the West Indies regional tournament. Darren Sammy became the first St. Lucian to represent the West Indies on his debut in 2007, and since 2010 has captained the side. In an international career spanning 2003 to 2008, and including 41 ODIs and 1 Test, Nadine George MBE became the first woman to score a Test century for the team. Sammy and George were recognized by the St. Lucian government as Sportsman of the Year and Sportswoman of the Year respectively for 2004. For sailing enthusiasts, the annual Atlantic Rally for Cruisers, ARC, race begins in the Canary Islands and ends in St. Lucia. The year 2015 marked the ARC's 30th year of existence. Every November, the race attracts over 200 boats and 1,200 people to sail across the Atlantic to the Caribbean. In 2019, a modern state-of-the-art horse racing facility will open. One of the main contributors will be the China Horse Club, operators of racetracks in Asia. Music and dance. Together with Caribbean music genres such as calypso, soca, dancehall, reggae, compas, zouk, and salsa, St. Lucia has a strong indigenous folk music tradition. Each May since 1991, St. Lucia has hosted an internationally renowned jazz festival. In 2013, the festival was rebranded the St. Lucia Jazz and Arts Festival, which encompassed culture, visual art, alternative music, education, fashion, and food. Dancing in St. Lucia is inspired by Caribbean culture and enjoys an active following. A popular folk dance is the quadrille. Cinema. Much of the scenery for the film Dr. Dolittle was shot here in 1967. Water was shot here, as were parts of Firepower. Education. The Education Act provides for free and compulsory education in St. Lucia from the ages of 5 to 15. Public spending on education was at 5.8% among the 2002 to 2005 GDP. St. Lucia has one university, the University of the West Indies Open Campus, and a few medical schools: American International Medical University, International American University - College of Medicine, Destiny University School of Medicine and Health Sciences, and the oldest of which is Spartan Health Sciences University. Cuisine. St. Lucia's national dish is green figs and saltfish. The island's cuisine is a unique blend of West African, European, mainly British and French, and East Indian cuisine. This creates dynamic meal dishes such as macaroni pie, stewed chicken, rice and peas, fish broth or fish water, and soups packed full with fresh locally produced vegetables. Typical essential foodstuffs are potatoes, onions, celery, thyme, coconut milk, the very hot Scotch bonnet peppers, flour, and cornmeal. All mainstream meat and poultry are eaten in St. Lucia. Meat and seafood are normally stewed and browned to create a rich gravy, sometimes served over ground provisions or rice. The island is also home to the famous fried dough, known by many as a bake or Johnny cake. These bakes can be served with different sides, such as saltfish, which is either sautéed or lightly fried along with red, green peppers, onions, and seasoned well. This is the most common way for bake to be prepared, though it can also be served with meats such as stewed chicken or beef. One popular St. Lucian dessert is the pastry called a turnover. The pastry is made with sweetened coconut that is boiled with spices, some sugar, and whatever is satisfying. It is boiled until cooked to a light or dark brown color. Then the mixture is separated into various size portions placed on a rolled out piece of dough. The dough size may vary too depending on how much is desired, and lastly, it is baked in the oven until the color of the turnover is nicely browned. Due to St. Lucia's Indo-Caribbean population, curry is very popular. However, due to the blend of cooking styles, curry dishes have a distinct Caribbean twist. Roti is typically served as a fast food meal. The bread itself is very flat, sometimes very thin, and is wrapped around curried vegetables such as chickpeas and potato, seafood such as shrimp and conch, or meat such as chicken, beef, goat, and liver. LGBTQ acceptance. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender, LGBT, people living in St. Lucia face legal challenges not experienced by non-LGBT members of the population. St. Lucia prohibits male-on-male sexual activity, punishing those found guilty with 10 years in jail. St. Lucia was also the only UN member in the Americas to formally oppose the UN Declaration on Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity. Flora and fauna. A species of lizard, Iyonola, is named for and is endemic to St. Lucia. Gallery 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 for and is